In today's lesson, we are going to look at the topic, how did European expansion change the world? During this lesson, we are going to look at these four aspects. The first aspect, it will be on what made European expansion possible. The second aspect, it will be on the Spanish conquest. And then the third aspect, it will be on the process of the Spanish conquest. Then finally, we're going to look at colonialism and slavery in Spanish America. What made European expansion possible? In this aspect, we are going to look at why was Europe able to impose its presence on the rest of the world. So the first aspect that made the European expansion possible, it was the European Renaissance. So this means that during the 15th and 16th centuries, there was a rebirth of learning. New developments in science and technology and in art and literature took place during this time. So this period of rebirth and development is called the European Renaissance. The Renaissance created a new willingness to experience and to observe as much as possible around the world. So the European Renaissance brought about an awareness of an interest in the rest of the world, which led to the European exploration of lands overseas. So the idea of the European Renaissance led to a change in the way Europe interacted with the rest of the world. So besides the European Renaissance, there are other factors that made European expansion possible, which included first, a search for trade, wealth, status, and profit. And then there's the third aspect, it was a desire and the curiosity, which was brought about by the Renaissance, so that people can learn about and understand the world. And then the last one, it was the other factor, it was religion, which was a desire to share the Christian faith with non-Christians around the world.
Yes, so now we're gonna look at the process of Spanish conquest. Without any further much to do, let us just check the word conquest. Because as much as I can remember, we all know what is the process, we know Spanish. Yeah, so now let us just check this new word. What exactly does it mean? So, in simple terms, I think it is fine if we can just say it is taking control over something. But then in this context, we are speaking of the process of Spanish conquest. So in this context, we will just say it is Spain taking control over a population of Americans. Yes, I think it is better if we use it like that. I mean, if we refer to it like that. So this process of, the process of Spanish conquest, it is a period of European exploration and colonization, which took place in the late 15th century, and it continued to the 19th century. It was led by Christopher Columbus. Yes, it was led by Christopher Columbus, who was an explorer at the time. So they conquered and colonized much of the American population. So we can just say it was a forced expansion and takeover of Americans by the Spain. So yes, that is what we call the process of Spanish conquest. So the Spanish explorers, they left Spain and went to the Americans sailing in ship called caravels with an aim of taking over, with an aim of conquering them. But then when they reached there, they were outnumbered by the indigenous, or rather the Native American population. But then they were very powerful. They used extreme violence. Then it helped them in their conquest. It helped them taking over Americans, taking over the population of Americans. They used military force, and then they spread some diseases. So, continuing with the process of Spanish conquest, we gonna look at the Spanish forces, which were called the conquistadors, up against the Native American forces. So now, what were the Spanish forces known for? The conquistadors. So this word, it refers to conquerors. Yes, in short, conquerors. Let's just stick to conquerors. These were Spanish forces which conquered the Americans. They were powerful, they were powerful and professional soldiers, explorers and adventurers, which were coming from Spain. The Spanish forces, another advantage they had is that they were aware of the weather conditions of the Americans, of Europe. They were aware of the climate, the terrain. They were much familiar with it. Let me just use the word familiar. They were familiar with it. So that made the Americans to be killed by diseases more than weapons. So what the Spanish did, the Spanish forces, is that they exposed the Native Americans to epidemics such as smallpox, tuberculosis, herpes, and measles, to which the Native Americans, they were not familiar to it, or rather they had no immune resistance to that. So
colonialism and slavery in Spanish America. Colonialism is taking over one's land and even exploiting the country economically. Colonialism took away a black man's property. That is why today we need to know what colonialism is. Many cultural diversities were changed because of colonialism, and many families were left without any land to live on. Furthermore, we'll be looking on what is slavery. Slavery is being owned by another person whom we can address as a master. Slavery meant long working hours with little money or no pay at all. Slavery existed so much in Africa by that our brothers and sisters were sold, brutally tortured, overworked, and even raped. But slavery and slave trade changed when the Europeans began to colonize most parts of the world. In continuation, we'll be looking on how slaves were treated. This slavery was named the transatlantic slave trade. which made a drastic number of Africans in the West to cross the Atlantic Ocean. The slaves were captured for guns and goods. The following points address us on how slaves were treated when they arrived in America. The slaves were seen as less humane. They were treated with extreme brutality. They transferred from human beings to being possessions. They had no legal rights and lastly did not receive any wages. The black Americans that we see today were because of the transatlantic slave trade, because their ancestors belonged to those slaves that were exported to America.